At the highest levels of corporate power is a strange and exclusive club, one where the same elite group of executives, investors, and former government officials seem to endlessly rotate through the biggest companies in the world. One day, they're overseeing a trillion-dollar tech empire. The next, they're making decisions about pharmaceuticals, defense contracts, or fast food chains. Take a look at any Fortune 500 boardroom, and you'll see the same pattern. Former Treasury secretaries sitting on the board of ride-sharing companies, Hollywood studio executives weighing in on semiconductor manufacturing, and billionaire investors casually deciding the future of artificial intelligence. The CEO of one company is on the board of another, whose board members sit on yet another, creating a web of power that stretches across industries in ways most people never realize. It's a game of corporate musical chairs, and unless you're already in, you're not getting a seat. But what the hell do these people actually do? Most people never think about corporate boards. If they do, they imagine them as groups of distinguished business minds sitting around a long mahogany table, debating the future of the company with ruthless efficiency. The reality, though, is far more complicated and far more interesting. A corporate board of directors is supposed to act as the ultimate safeguard of a company's integrity. They exist to protect shareholder interests, ensure long-term growth, and most importantly, keep executives in check. Theoretically, they have the power to fire the CEO, approve billion-dollar acquisitions, and shape corporate strategy. But here's the problem. Many board members are deeply intertwined with the very executives they are supposed to oversee. Instead of being watchdogs, corporate boards often function as clubhouses for the ultra-elite, where former CEOs, politicians, and Wall Street titans rotate between high-paying positions, making decisions that affect millions, while remaining insulated from consequences. The average person may never even hear their names, but these individuals hold immense power over global businesses, economies, and, by extension, everyday lives. If you were appointed to a corporate board, it wouldn't be a full-time job. At most, you'd be expected to attend a handful of board meetings each year, where the CEO and other top executives present updates on the company's performance. They'll outline major strategic moves, perhaps an expansion into new markets, a controversial investment, or a proposal to acquire a rival company. The board is supposed to challenge these decisions, ask tough questions, and act as a check on reckless leadership. But that's where theory and reality start to diverge. In many cases, board members simply nod along, rubber-stamping executive decisions with minimal scrutiny, because corporate boardrooms operate on relationships, not accountability. If a CEO delivers strong stock performance, board members have little incentive to challenge them. And since many board members are former executives themselves, they understand the unspoken rule. Don't rock the boat, and the money keeps flowing. Being on a board is one of the most lucrative side gigs in existence. Directors of Fortune 500 companies can earn anywhere from $250,000 to several $1 million per year for their services, often for just a few hours of work each month. Take Meta, for example. In 2023, the company's board members earned between $397,000 and $4.2 million in total compensation. For many directors, this is just one of several board positions they hold, meaning they can rake in millions annually by attending a handful of meetings and signing off on corporate strategy. This practice was once even more extreme. Before corporate governance reforms, board seats were often handed out like political favors. CEOs would appoint their friends, business partners, or even family members to serve as directors, ensuring that their decisions would never face real scrutiny. Today, there are more regulations in place, but the old culture of clubby, interconnected elites still dominates many boardrooms. If you're wondering how someone lands one of these cushy, high-paying board seats, the answer is simple: connections. For public companies, board members are supposed to be elected by shareholders. In reality, the nomination process is controlled by existing leadership, meaning the board essentially chooses its own members. And who do they pick? Other insiders. The same small circle of former CEOs, investment bankers, and political power players shuffle between multiple corporate boards, maintaining a tight grip on decision-making. For private companies, the process is even more insular. Venture capitalists, hedge funds, and early investors often secure board seats as part of their investments, giving them direct influence over company strategy. If you've ever wondered why some startup CEOs suddenly find themselves forced out of their own companies, this is why. The board holds the ultimate power. In most cases, the board has the power to fire the CEO. This only happens when a company is in crisis. Most CEOs know how to keep their boards happy. A famous example is Jamie Dimon, CEO of JP Morgan Chase. Despite multiple scandals, regulatory fines, and public criticism, he has remained in power for over a decade because the board is happy with the bank's performance and sees no reason to replace him. On the flip side, when things go south, the board can turn on a CEO in an instant. If you look at the composition of most corporate boards, you'll notice something interesting. They're overwhelmingly older. According to Fortune, the average age of an S&P 500 board member is over 63 years old. Why does this matter? Because many of these directors have been in positions of power for decades. They've built deep relationships with regulators, lawmakers, and other executives, giving them immense influence beyond the companies they oversee. Having a board member with direct political connections can be incredibly valuable. A prime example of this was Dana White, president of the UFC, who was given a board seat at a major corporation, not because of his business acumen, but because of his close relationship with President Donald Trump. It's not uncommon to see former politicians or high-ranking government officials sitting on corporate boards. These individuals may not have deep industry knowledge, but they provide something even more valuable: access. Despite their flaws, boards do have moments where they exert real influence. Typically, this happens when a company faces scandal, financial collapse, or overwhelming public scrutiny. Consider Boeing. After the 737 MAX disasters, where 2 crashes killed hundreds of people, the company's board faced immense pressure to act. Eventually, the CEO was forced to step down, and major changes were made at the company. But this only happened after Boeing's failures became too big to ignore. Another example is General Electric. For decades, GE was seen as one of the most stable corporations in America, but as the company's financial struggles worsened, the board was ultimately forced to step in and overhaul leadership. These cases highlight a harsh reality. Corporate boards often don't act until they have no other choice. Instead of proactively guiding companies toward long-term success, they frequently operate in crisis mode, responding only when problems become impossible to contain. There's an old saying in corporate circles: boards don't lead, they react. It's a cynical take, but it reflects a fundamental truth about how these groups operate. The most powerful corporate decisions aren't always made in public board meetings or through formal votes. They happen in quiet conversations, over private dinners, and in back channels that never make it into the minutes. By the time a major decision is officially announced, whether it's the firing of a CEO, the approval of a controversial acquisition, or a sudden shift in company direction, the real battle has already been fought and decided behind closed doors. This is why the composition of a board is just as important as its stated purpose. The people who sit in those chairs aren't just names on a list. They are key players in a vast, interconnected system where influence is currency. Many of them have spent decades climbing the corporate ladder, learning exactly how to navigate power structures without ever making themselves too vulnerable. Some are former executives who have transitioned from running companies to overseeing them, bringing with them years of experience, but also the same biases and priorities that shaped their careers. Others are political operatives or regulatory veterans, brought in not necessarily for their business expertise, but for their ability to keep the company in the good graces of the government. And then there are the financiers, the hedge fund managers, private equity veterans, and institutional investors who sit on multiple boards at once, ensuring that their firm's interests are represented at the highest levels. Because of this, most board decisions aren't made in a vacuum. They are shaped by outside forces, activist investors demanding short-term gains, regulatory agencies threatening scrutiny, media narratives that shift public perception, and increasingly, employees and customers who can mobilize online and put pressure on leadership. A board may approve a CEO's decision, not because they fully agree with it, but because they've calculated that pushing back would cause more instability than it's worth. Other times, they'll take a firm stand, not necessarily for ethical reasons, but because they recognize that inaction could put their own reputations and financial stakes at risk. This delicate balancing act is why boards rarely step in until a crisis forces their hand. As long as stock prices are strong and profits are flowing, even reckless leadership can be tolerated. But when things start to crack, when scandal erupts, when investors panic, when losses mount, then the board suddenly transforms from a passive observer into an active player. And when that moment comes, it can be ruthless. CEOs who once seemed untouchable are pushed out overnight. Companies that spent years pursuing one strategy are abruptly forced to pivot. Deals that seemed like foregone conclusions collapse under the weight of internal opposition. At the end of the day, the role of a board is not just about governance, it's about control. And control in the corporate world isn't just about making decisions, it's about deciding who gets to make them. Boards may not always be in the driver's seat, but they hold the keys. They decide who gets hired, who gets fired, and ultimately, what kind of leadership is tolerated. It's a system that operates largely out of sight, yet its impact is everywhere, from the products people buy to the stability of entire economies. For those looking in from the outside, corporate boards may seem like distant, abstract institutions, but they are in many ways the invisible architects of modern business. Whether they are safeguarding a company's future or merely protecting their own interests is a question that depends on the moment, the players involved, and the ever-shifting landscape of power in the corporate world. What's certain is that as long as money, influence, and ambition drive business, the boardroom will remain a place where fortunes are made, careers are broken, and the most important decisions are often made long before the official vote is ever cast.